Hello there, a very good morning to you. You're watching Niger Live Television with me, Henry Ahamuefula, this Wednesday morning now. A number of things that are trending locally, nationally, and globally, but well, let's bring you up to speed with some of the stories on the papers this morning. And so we start off with the Vanguard paper this Wednesday morning, and the lead story on the Vanguard paper is on the international scene, where it brings a story on the Middle East war, the fallout of the Middle East war. Crude oil dropping to $88 per barrel and Dangote cotton price to 1,075 naira. It's how they put their lead story this morning. This is as Trump says the war is to end soon, and Iran has vowed continuation of missile attacks. Depot owners, oil marketers, they remain adamant and expect depots, filling stations adjustment later. An expert is saying that, as well as Petron saying that, well, the US-Iran conflict could hit emerging market economies. That Fitch warning there is a story that's contained on the Vanguard paper this morning. I'll check out also another story that's above the nameplate of the Vanguard paper. The story is coming from the ex-inspector general of police, that's Beto Oko, who says, who's giving a revelation into why some groups are after him. It's on page 7 of the Vanguard. Why some groups are after me. He offers a revelation where he mentions a number of groups from the police and outside of the police, why they came after him, and exactly, some of the things that led to him stepping down. Also on page 8 of the Vanguard paper, you get a story around the appeal court verdict deepening PDP crisis. This is as rival camps set separate BOT meetings. The camp of the Wike and the camp of the Turaki having separate BOT meetings. It's a story you get on the page 8 of the Vanguard paper this morning. Government knows terrorists' identities and locations. That's coming from Sheikh Gumi, the religious expert who says that the federal government and the government personnel would often go with him, to some of these negotiations, or meeting with some of these persons who are into the insecurity stuff. And so he's saying here that the federal government knows the identities of terrorists and also their locations. I don't want to get on with what the implication of that statement is, and so I'm going to leave that for you to make out for yourself. I'll take another story on insecurity. This is as protests rock Ondo, Oyo, as youths block highway with corpses. Now, the insecurity has gotten to this alarming rate that, well, the residents and natives are now protesting with their dead body, like the dead body of their dead on the highways. This is to show that we can no longer take this anymore. That's a story you get on page 10 of the Vanguard paper this morning. I'll leave the paper quickly and check out the Daily Monitor paper, where above the nameplate they're reporting that Dangote slashed payments price by 100 naira and declaring fuel scarcity gone for good. That's a story above the nameplate. Another story above that story is on Tinubu directing deployment of 100,000 CNG conversion kits nationwide. On page 4, you get a story. There are several talks around this particular move by the president, with many saying that it is rather belated. Why exactly is the president not proactive? Well, you mustn't wait for the Middle East crisis to get this bad. Some would say that immediately you hear that there is a Middle East crisis, you should be doing this, or even before then. The talk of CNG has been going on for a while. Why are we just waiting up until now to make this directive of 100,000 CNG conversion kits? This is as experts have been citing that it's part of the problem why we've not adopted fully CNG vehicles around here in Nigeria. But beside that story, there's a story on NNPC. All right, it's NNPC securing presidential approval for $20 billion final investment decision on Bonga deep water project. On page 2, a story that many have said pretends to be something great for Nigeria, and just in the nearest future we'll see the impact of these. The project is something that's going to allow for some over 100,000 barrels of crude, and so it's something interesting for Nigeria. But check that out on page 2 of the Vanguard paper. And beside it is a story also on insecurity. I took it already. Residents protesting and blocking highway in Ondo. And also welcoming federal government's enhanced gratuity for retiring civil servants is on page 4 of the paper. Well, the lead story of the paper is around Saraki, Bukola Saraki, former Senate president, telling PDP leaders to end all legal battles and hold fresh convention, because clearly this would likely jeopardize the chances of the PDP to produce aspirants, candidates, right, for 2027, be it the governorship or across the states, National Assembly positions. Clearly, many are saying it could jeopardize if they delay and wait for the Supreme Court judgment, which may run up until September. It just may prevent them, right, from being able to have candidates. Well, writers to that story says a party may miss 2027 elections over litigation. Clearly, I have already highlighted. PDP won't die. It will be on the ballot in 2027. That's Turaki faction assuring. Well, all the cards are clearly not in his hand. So let's see how that plays out. Another story on the Daily Monitor is one I've already taken. Federal government being aware of identities, locations of terrorists. Gumi making that allegation there. There's a rider to it, so I'll take the rider. He says he goes with police and other security agencies to negotiate with them, those who are in this insecurity business, I'd like to call it. And away from that real quick to the Business Day paper, or perhaps I leave the Business Day paper and touch a little on the Nigerian Tribune before I come back to the Business Day paper, right? On the Nigerian Tribune, the Middle East crisis may trigger inflation, capital outflow. That's federal government saying this is as petrol stations are yet to reflect new rate as Dangote refinery slashes the PMS price. As of yesterday, petrol was selling for some 1,300 naira around here. So we're expecting at least a reduction, perhaps by 100 or 150 naira, to see petrol selling for 1,150, 1,200 naira. A reduction, yes, all right? This would also make for a reduction in the price of transportation, because it's already, skyrocketed. As of yesterday, places you go for 300, you would now go for 400 naira, typically a function of the increment in fuel price. Well, Dangote's reduction should also be reflected in the petrol stations, how they sell, and also in the tricycle operators, and also in the market women and what they sell. There should be that reduction, right? Experts are saying. Other writers to that story, I'll take real quick. It has oil prices fall 15% after U.S. Navy escorts tanker through Hormuz Strait, and Iran begins laying mines in Strait of Hormuz. CNN reports that report there, we're not very certain, but it's a report from CNN that Iran is laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz, that critical corridor that allows for 1/5 of aircraft from the world, pass through. So Iran has clearly blocked that area, not allowing for tankers to pass through, except for the tanker that was escorted by the U.S. Navy, right? There is the report, like I mentioned, that Iran is laying mines. So whichever tanker goes there likely will be blown. Away from that, surging PMS price, federal government orders deployment of 100,000 CNG conversion kits nationwide. Page 2 also carries that story I took earlier. On kidnapping, protests in Ondo, Oyo. Page 3, you get that story. Reporting that 2 persons are dead, 3 persons are abducted as Ayedatiwa vows crackdown on kidnappers. Protesters cause gridlock on Ibadan Oyo Road. Police, Kwebi DPO, detained inspector over protests in Oyo community. Arrests 2 Nigerian nationals, 30 other suspected bandits in Kwara. That's the police, right? The Query DPO detained inspector over protests in Oyo community, and also they have arrested 2 Nigerian nationals, 30 other suspected bandits in Kwara. Clearly, they're referring to Niger, right? As some of the folk of the country having hands in the banditry that's rocking Kwara. Afenifere also expresses concern over rising cases of kidnapping and banditry in the southwest. This is a story you get of the Nigerian Tribune this morning, right? Page 3 has the story. Page 28 is reporting on the ASU and Unilag, the strike. They say ASU and Unilag begin strike over unpaid salaries. NAF offers drone support to INEC for 2027 election monitoring. Would you look at that? The Nigerian Air Force willing to offer drone support, not even willing this time, they are offering drone support to INEC for 2027 election monitoring. For those who are rigging, for those who intend to perpetuate violence and of those, there is an eye, a bad eye, right? On health, new injectable gel could help treat permanent voice loss. There's a report that's saying that, good news for those who suffer from that thing often, where you talk a little and then you don't have enough voice to continue. I mean, you lose your voice, yeah. Well, there is a gel that's reportedly, when it's injected into you, you may not have that voice loss. I mean, especially those whose voice loss are permanent, yeah. Another story on the Nigerian Tribune is that around the appeal court ruling and the PDP factions holding tight to the party and your governor, Sheyi Makinde, saying it's a challenging period for democracy, but they are unburdened. Clearly, there is Bala Mohammed and Sheyi Makinde of your state. These are the two remaining governors of the People's Democratic Party with 31 governors already. I mean, the APC has 31 governors. PDP has 2 governors, and the rest is spread across the rest parties, APGA, the Labour Party. Alrighty. I leave the Nigerian Tribune this morning to the Daily Sun paper, and very close to the masthead is the story on Enugu Air getting AOC in record time, targeting regional flights by year end. This is an airline that is 100% owned by the Enugu state government. All right. And they've gotten that clearance certificate, to begin flight, and they're targeting regional flights by the end of this year. You get a story on page 29 of the Daily Sun paper this morning. U.S. flags planned attacks on its facilities in Nigeria. It's a story that we've been seeing. It didn't just start this morning. We saw some of those reports yesterday. Also, U.S. flagging planned attacks on its facilities in Nigeria. It mentioned facilities in Abuja, in Lagos, and schools that has affiliations with the U.S. And so it's telling the citizens to be careful and, if possible, to move. That's a story you get on the Daily Sun paper. It's contained on page 26 of the paper this morning. The story on Tinubu rolling out the 100,000 CNG is also 100,000 CNG kits is also on the Daily Sun paper, and Gumi accusation of federal government knowing terrorists also is there. Police making breakthrough in hunt for killers of a Boeing monarch and arresting the mastermind is also another story you find on the Daily Sun paper this morning. I'll leave that Daily Sun paper and check out the Daily Trust paper. Right. Fuel crisis deepens. Economists tell federal government to act. That's the story, the latest story of the Daily Trust paper. And above it, nursing students protest 544% hike in fees. This nursing students in Anambra State University Teaching Hospital Anambra are protesting some 544% hike in fees. Land they used to pay around 50-something thousand, and now they have to pay over 500,000 or something of that nature. Some 544% hike in fees is a lot. So they are protesting that increment right there, because it means that a lot of students would have to drop, yeah? And, hence the protest. Troops neutralize terrorists, recover arms in Sokoto State. A fake doctor is to die by hanging in Ekiti. The story surrounding this fake doctor, having to die by hanging in Ekiti State is one that is sorry. It's one that it speaks so sadly of a medical system, especially those who would want to call themselves a doctor and even go ahead in performing operations when they are not certified doctors. So this particular fake doctor, as has been reported, carried out an operation on a woman, and the woman passed on. Clearly, the court held him for murder of the woman, having carried out an operation on her when he wasn't exactly a doctor, not a certified doctor anyway. And yeah, he's been sentenced to die by hanging, and that's something that happened in Ekiti State. Don't let me cut you short on that story. Page 5 gets you full details into that particular story on the Daily Trust paper this morning. Another story you get on the Daily Trust paper that you may find an interesting read is a story on an NSCDC personnel that was shot dead after an accidental discharge killed one. Alrighty. Also, two brothers drowning while fleeing phone snatchers in Kano also makes for another interesting raid. Clearly, they were running away from people who, thugs who would want to snatch their phone, and they met their early demise. They had to jump into some sort of river, in order to flee from them. And well, the police and the fire service in Kano State are reporting that their bodies were found. And after investigation, it was shown that they were running from those who were wanting to snatch their phones. The This Day paper this morning, above the nameplate is a story we already took on Dangote and Rabiu dominating the Forbes 2026 billionaires list. But the nameplate, below the nameplate, directly below the nameplate, is that story on Nigerians groaning on the rising fuel prices and our president coming to the rescue, directing deployment of 100,000 CNG conversion kits. Well, NNPC presidential approval secured for $20 billion final investment decision on Bonga Deep Water project. All right, that's a story you get on the This Day paper. The This Day paper continues with the riders to that story. It says it's the first FID on a Nigeria deep water PSC asset since 2008. And also, it is projected, the project rather, is expected to produce 150,000 barrels per day of crude. A good news I mentioned earlier for us. And also expected to create over 5,000 jobs. And this is Ojulari also saying there that they have broken the logjam. Alrighty, that's the This Day paper this morning. Allow me to check out the Business Day paper now, just before we call it a wrap on the paper's review, right? And the business paper is reporting, it says the dark millions behind Federal School of Statistics unaccredited courses. The dark millions behind Federal School of Statistics unaccredited courses. It's a story you find on the Business Day paper this morning. Alrighty. Naira defies rising oil prices as petrol currency status fades. Is also a story you find out on the Business Day paper this morning. Business Day paper also has a story on the Electoral Act, giving some sort of insight into key provisions that put the opposition on edge on page 22 of the Business Day paper. That's pretty much the papers I have for you all this morning. And so this is where our curtain falls on the paper. But not to worry, we'll bring you more news just in a moment. My name is Henry Ahamuefula. Thank you so much for staying with Niger Live Television. Bye for now.
Grades of metals. It will be easier for the young to get the metals and come to a place like us, and then we will carve it for them, cut, bend, and then do all that. This country will develop, but we don't have. We have to look at China or any of those countries to bring those things to us. So that is the story of Nigeria.
Every ripple starts with a single drop.